The Revenge of D.B. Cooper. The rain came down in sheets, heavy enough to blur the tree line where he'd landed. The night of the jump had not gone the way he planned. He lay still in the wet leaves, ribs aching, parachute half buried in mud, the satchel of money sprawled open. Bills had fluttered away into the storm like birds freed from a cage. By morning, most of the ransom was gone, washed downriver, shredded, or stuck high in branches he couldn't climb. D.B. Cooper, the name the world had given him, stared at what was left. A few damp bundles, barely a fraction of the $200,000. He had risked everything, plotted every angle, and the payoff had dissolved into paper mush. He gritted his teeth. He wasn't done. Weeks later, he resurfaced far from the Cascade wilderness, living in a shabby rental under another borrowed name. The newspapers still obsessed over him, sketching his face, speculating about his fate. Dead in the woods, most guessed. Good. The dead were invisible. But he was alive, and he needed another plan. Airlines were now crawling with guards and metal detectors. The skies were closed to him. He read articles about armored trucks instead, rolling fortresses that carried not just money, but diamonds, bonds, and sometimes gold. Unlike an airplane, they didn't fly away, and unlike parachutes, trucks didn't tear apart in the rain. Cooper began to haunt coffee shops near armored depots, listening to workers swap stories. He studied their uniforms, the way their keys jangled, the weight of their steel-toed boots. He bought coveralls, a reflective vest, and a cap stitched with the logo of a well-known security company. His disguise was simple but convincing. One morning, he shadowed a truck assigned to ferry valuables from a downtown bank to a private vault. The vehicle stopped at a narrow alley behind the bank, where two guards rolled a dolly inside. One remained in the truck, door cracked, cigarette glowing faintly. Cooper took note of everything: who lingered, who rushed, who looked bored. He needed speed and misdirection. A month later, the opportunity arrived. The same truck, the same route. This time, Cooper wore the uniform and carried a forged clipboard. He approached just as the guards unloaded. His voice was calm, firm, practiced. "Schedule change. I'll take the second load." The guards, weary and trusting their own system more than their instincts, barely glanced at him. He wheeled the dolly inside, heart hammering, and instead of stopping at the vault, he pushed straight through the bank, out a side door, and into a rented van waiting in the alley. Inside the cases lay gold bars and a pouch of uncut diamonds worth millions. By the time the guards realized something was wrong, the dolly was gone, the van was gone, and the man who took it had vanished into traffic. For weeks, the theft dominated headlines. Some suspected it was an inside job. Others whispered the name Cooper, as though summoning a ghost. He almost smiled when he read it. Yet wealth brought no peace. Gold was heavy, harder to move than paper. Diamonds were easier, but buyers asked questions. He found himself in smoky back rooms with men whose handshakes were knives, whose smiles never reached their eyes. Every transaction chipped away at his anonymity. Every payoff bought him freedom, but also exposure. At night he lay awake, listening for footsteps on the stairs. He imagined the FBI circling, tightening the net. Or worse, criminals who had heard of the haul, who believed he had mountains of treasure stashed in some safe house. One winter evening, he rented a cabin under another alias. He brought only a fraction of his gains. He told himself it was temporary, a pause before disappearing for good. He lit the fireplace, opened a bottle, and stared at the flames. There were knocks at the door. 3, steady, deliberate. He froze. The knocks came again. Cooper slipped his revolver from the drawer, but the fire's crackle drowned his breathing. Whoever was outside didn't call his name, didn't force entry. They waited, patient. At last the knocking stopped. When he opened the door minutes later, the porch was empty. Only the snow, unbroken, stretched into the forest. No footprints. He shut the door slowly. In the silence, Cooper realized something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since the night of the jump. The chase had become his life. The money, the diamonds, the gold, they were secondary. The true currency was the mystery. As long as he remained a shadow, the world would keep searching, guessing, inventing legends, and he would keep moving. He banked the fire low, packed his satchel, and left the cabin behind before dawn. Somewhere, a new disguise waited. Somewhere, another story was ready to be written about the man who slipped through the cracks of history. Whether he was rich or broke didn't matter anymore. D.B. Cooper had already stolen something far greater than gold. He had stolen eternity.